The black SUV first appeared when Jack was on his way to make a delivery, and he thought it was just a coincidence. But the next day it appeared again, following him through every street, making him worry. The tension comes to a head when a strange envelope is placed in his mailbox, containing a mysterious invitation to meet at the park. There, a strange man appears, carrying The revelation left Jack stunned. It all started with the act of helping an old lady cross the street. But Jack had no idea that, from that small moment, his life would take a completely new turn. Welcome to Kindness Stories, where every small act of kindness has an extraordinary story. Today, we'll explore the surprising story of an ordinary delivery man whose life was completely changed after just one special moment. So what happened? Listen closely, because this story may make you believe that kindness has magical powers. Jack, a 25-year-old delivery man, lives in a small apartment in a low-income neighborhood. His days are a constant cycle of orders, traffic jams, and financial stress. Jack's family was once well off, but debts accumulated after his father's death have left them struggling. His mother now works part-time at a grocery store, while Jack tries to earn money to support her and pay for his sister's college tuition. One late afternoon after rush hour, Jack was on his way to make his last deliveries. The traffic was so tight that he could barely move. As he waited at the red light, he saw a thin old woman standing on the side of the road, clutching her old handbag. She looked at the traffic, clearly wanting to cross but not daring to. The cars passed by without stopping, and the other pedestrians just walked past her as if they didn't see her. Jack sighed. He knew he could just ignore it like everyone else, but he couldn't bring himself to. "I have a few minutes," he thought. After quickly pulling over, he walked over, flashing a small smile. "Let me help you cross the street." The old lady was a little hesitant at first, but Jack's sincere eyes reassured her. With Jack's help, they safely crossed the busy street. The old lady held his hand tightly, thanking him with a trembling voice. Jack just smiled and replied, "It's nothing, ma'am. Take care of yourself." He quickly returned to work, not thinking that this small act would change his life. The next day, as Jack was making his morning deliveries, he noticed something unusual. A black SUV was parked nearby, and the person in the car seemed to be following him. At first, he didn't think much of it, thinking it was just a coincidence. But the unsettling feeling began to set in as he made 2 more deliveries, and the same car appeared again, even though he had been in completely different areas. "I must be imagining things," Jack told himself, trying to shake off his worries. But when he stopped at a gas station that afternoon, the SUV reappeared. This time he got a better look. The windows were tinted, and he couldn't see who was inside. A shiver ran down his spine. "Are they watching me?" Jack thought. But he couldn't understand why a mere delivery man like himself would attract anyone's attention. Over the next few days, the black SUV continued to appear, sometimes parked far away from him, sometimes quietly following his car. Though it made no threatening moves, its constant presence kept Jack awake at night. Terrifying thoughts raced through his mind. Had he done something wrong during the delivery? Was someone trying to harm him? He even considered the possibility that he had unwittingly become involved with some criminal organization without even knowing it. One day, after making a delivery in the suburbs, Jack decided to try to lose the SUV. He made sudden turns, went down narrow streets he knew well, and even drove around residential areas. However, when he stopped to check behind him, the SUV was still there. They didn't give up. Sweat poured down his forehead, and Jack began to feel hopeless. That night, as he returned home, he kept looking over his shoulder, worried that someone might be waiting for him. Jack even considered calling the police, but wondered if he was overreacting. Things only became more confusing when he found a strange envelope in the mailbox the next morning. Inside the envelope was a small piece of paper with just one line written on it. "Meet me in Central Park tomorrow at 4 p.m. I have something important to tell you." Jack looked at the short text, his heart pounding. Who was the sender? What did they want from him? Should he go or not? The questions kept popping up in his mind, but the answers were still beyond his reach. Finally, after hours of deliberation, Jack decided that he needed to face the truth. "I can't live in fear like this forever," he told himself, preparing for the encounter that he knew would change his life. The next afternoon, Jack left home earlier than planned to take in the surroundings. Central Park was bustling with activity in the afternoon, with elderly people strolling, children playing, and people jogging for exercise. The peacefulness of the place made Jack feel less stressed, but his mind was still filled with unease. He circled the park a few times, his eyes scanning for unfamiliar faces. There was no black SUV in sight, which made him both relieved and wary. "Maybe they're watching me from a distance," he thought. Except, at 4 p.m., Jack sat down on a wooden bench near the lake. Around him, people were still going about their business as usual. There was no sign that anyone was waiting for him. As time passed, Jack began to think that he had been tricked, or that this was just a cruel joke. "Jack, you're early," a deep, clear voice said from behind. He turned around, startled. A middle-aged man, about 50 years old, dressed neatly in a dark blue suit, stood there. He had neatly combed silver hair, a calm face but sharp eyes. Jack immediately recognized him as the man who had been sitting in the black SUV. "Who are you? Why have you been following me all these days?" Jack stood up, squinting at him, his hands clenched. The man didn't answer right away, instead sitting down on the bench, patting the empty spot next to him, inviting Jack to sit with him. "Sit down. I don't mean to hurt you," he replied. Jack hesitated for a few seconds but sat down, his eyes wary. "I don't have much time. Make it quick." The man smiled, seemingly pleased with Jack's attitude. "Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Mr. Raymond. I work for someone you met recently. That person was very impressed with your actions." "The person I met?" "Ah. The old lady you helped cross the street," Raymond said, looking straight at Jack. Jack frowned, trying to remember. "That old lady? It was just a small matter. No need to keep an eye on me like that." Raymond laughed. "You don't know who she is, do you? She's the mother of Walter Harrington, founder and CEO of the Harrington Group." Jack blinked a few times, unable to believe his ears. "You mean that big corporation that was on the financial news? The real estate and technology company?" "Myth or Joyce?" Crowther replied just as quietly, and backing up with his hands on his knees. It was a chronic pain for Jack. "Yes," Raymond nodded, his face serious. "She told her son about you, how you were the only one in the crowd who stopped to help her. Mr. Harrington was very touched, and he wanted to do something to repay this act of kindness." Jack sat silently, trying to gather his thoughts. "So, that's why you've been following me these past few days?" "Exactly," said Raymond, slowly taking a white envelope from his coat pocket and handing it to Jack. "This is a gift from Mr. Harrington. You can refuse it if you don't want it, but I suggest you open it first." Jack looked at the envelope, hesitating for a few seconds before taking it. Jack carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of cash and a small note. His heart beat faster as he counted the bills. This was not a few $100s. It was thousands, probably up to $1,000. He looked at the accompanying note. There was only one short but meaningful line. "Thank you for being kind." Jack swallowed, his eyes never leaving the money. A mixture of shock and emotion filled his heart. He looked up at Raymond. Are you kidding me? I mean, I was just helping her cross the street. It's not the kind of thing anyone would pay that much for." Raymond smiled. Raymond tilted his head, a calm smile appearing on his face. "Mr. Harrington is not paying you for your actions. This is his gift, a reminder that sometimes the smallest actions can make a big difference." Jack still didn't quite believe it, so he asked again, "If I accept this money, are there any conditions attached? Do I have to work for him or do something in return?" "Oh, no," Raymond said immediately. "You don't have to do anything. Mr. Harrington just wants you to understand that there is still room for kindness in this world. You can do whatever you want with this money." Jack sat silently, staring at the bills. Images of the house bill, his mother's hospital bills, and his sister's college tuition flashed through his mind. $10,000 wasn't a life-changing amount of money, but it was enough to get him through this difficult time. He chuckled, his eyes slightly stinging. "I never thought I would be in this situation. It's strange. Such a small thing. And yet," Raymond placed a hand on his shoulder, patting him gently. "The smallest things often bring the biggest results. Don't take your kindness for granted, Jack." Jack looked at him with gratitude. He had done many hard, tiring jobs in his life, but he had never felt as relieved as he did now. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I won't waste this money." Jack folded the money and carefully tucked it into his coat pocket. Martin caught up to Jack, leading him into the living room, and Jack followed, hoping to avoid the memories. He leaned against the wall. "You don't need to thank me. Thank yourself," Raymond replied, smiling kindly. Before leaving, Raymond turned back and added, "Oh, and if you ever want to find a more stable job, Harrington Group is always open to people like you. Remember that." Jack only had time to nod as he left. That evening, Jack sat in his small room, the pale yellow light shining on the bills on the table. He picked up the note and read the short line again. "We live." The words were sad and clumsy, as if life were facing pain differences. The picture grew clearer. "Thank you for being kind." Now he realizes that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can change someone's life, and in Jack's case, it changed his own. From that day on, Jack began to look at life from a different perspective. No longer a delivery man rushing to avoid everything in his path, he now became a person who stopped when necessary, ready to help others. Because he understood one thing: kindness is never meaningless. After meeting Mr. Raymond, Jack's life began to change dramatically. The amount of $10,000 was not a huge amount of money, but for Jack, it was like a life buoy in the financial storm. The first thing he did was pay the next 3 months of rent, which saved him from having to worry about his landlord knocking on his door every day. Next, Jack sent some of the money to his mother so she could pay for her medical bills. Jack's mother had been working too hard at the grocery store, and Jack had always felt guilty for not being able to help her rest. Now, with the money, she could stop working and focus on her health. Jack gave another portion of the money to his younger sister, Lily, who was in her second year of college. For the past 2 years, Lily had been working part-time while studying to ease the burden on her family. When she received the money, Lily called Jack immediately. "Brother, this money! I don't dare accept it. You have to take care of yourself," Lily said over the phone. "Take it, Lily," Jack said, trying to keep his voice even. "I'm fine. I've thought about it. If you could focus on your studies and not have to work, you'd graduate sooner, and you'd be able to help Mom and me more. This isn't my money. It's money from a stranger who trusted my good intentions. I'm just doing what he wanted." Lily was silent for a moment, her voice trembling. "I'm proud of you, Jack." Hearing that, Jack felt his heart lighten. Since when did kindness bring him such a sense of fulfillment? After dealing with pressing financial issues, Jack found himself able to pause his running away from debt lifestyle. For the first time in months, he could sit quietly on the sofa, drink a cup of coffee, and not feel the pressure of time. And in that quiet moment, Jack thought about what had happened. A simple act of helping an old woman cross the street, something anyone could do, had set off a series of unexpected events. If he had just ignored it, if he had taken the quickest route home that day, would his life have been different? The thought made him smile. He thought, The next day, Jack returned to his delivery job, but this time he felt less burdened. Every time he received an order, he no longer thought, "I'll finish this one and go home." Instead, he asked himself, "Can I help someone today?" One afternoon, while delivering a package to an old apartment complex, Jack saw a boy of about 8 standing on the side of the road, holding a broken bicycle. His front tire was flat, and he was wondering what to do. Cars passed by him, paying no attention. Jack parked his motorbike nearby, took off his helmet, and walked over. "Is your bike broken?" he asked. "No," replied Jack, smiling. "I have a new bike." The boy raised his head, his face innocent but dirty. "Yes, sir. My tire's flat, and I don't know how to patch it." Jack chuckled, taking out a small toolkit from his car that he always carried. "Lucky for you, I have it here. Here, let me help." The boy looked at Jack with a look of wonder in his eyes, as if he had just met a superhero. They sat down on the sidewalk, and Jack showed the boy how to find a puncture, how to apply glue, and how to pump the tire back up. The boy watched intently, his eyes wide with curiosity. "There you go. Now you can do it yourself next time the car breaks down," Jack said, dusting off his hands and standing up. "Thank you, you're so kind," the boy exclaimed, his face beaming. Before he drove off, he turned back to wave to Jack. That moment made Jack realize that he had changed. Before, he might have just sped off, thinking it's none of my business. But now he understood that every small act of kindness had power. It not only helped others, but also helped him find meaning in his life. A few days later, Jack received a phone call from an unknown number. "Hello, Jack. This is Walter Harrington," came a deep, powerful voice from the other end of the line. Jack almost dropped the phone. "Mr. Harrington? Are you really Mr. Harrington?" "Why, that's right," replied Mr. Harrington. "I heard from Raymond that you've spent the money wisely. You've helped your mother, your sister, and I hear you've just helped a boy fix his bicycle." Jack was speechless. How did Mr. Harrington know that? "I have eyes everywhere, Jack," said Mr. Harrington, as if reading Jack's thoughts. "But I didn't call you just to compliment you. I have a proposition." "What offer?" Jack asked, his voice cautious. "You heard Raymond mention that Harrington Group is always welcoming to kind people, right?" Mr. Harrington's voice was warm but also had an air of authority. "We are looking for someone to be in charge of the Unsung Heroes program that my company is launching. Your job will be to find and honor people who do small acts of kindness that mean a lot. I can think of no one better than you." Jack was speechless. "You don't have to answer right away," Mr. Harrington continued. "Think about it. If you say yes, you'll no longer be a delivery guy. You'll be an inspiration to others, just like you've always been. And Jack, kindness has a place at the Harrington Group." The call ended, but Jack's heart was still pounding. He never thought that a kindness, which he once considered a small thing, could lead him to a big turning point in his life. The next morning, Jack awoke with a clear decision in his mind. He sat down at his desk and opened the little note that Mr. Harrington had enclosed with the money. "Thank you for being kind." For the first time, Jack wrote another sentence below it. "I will continue to be a kind person." And sure enough, Jack called Mr. Harrington back and accepted the offer. Not just for the job, not just for the money, but because he understood that acts of kindness no matter how small, have the power to change the world. That was the day Jack stopped being a delivery man and became a seeker and inspirer of goodness in others. And his new journey has just begun. On behalf of the people of the Bell Forum, today's story shows us that sometimes a small act of kindness can bring about big changes. Jack simply helped an old lady cross the street, but that moment opened a new door for his life. Kindness does not need to be repaid, but it always has a way of coming back in unexpected ways. If you find this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and follow Kindness Stories to discover more miracles. Remember, every day is an opportunity for you to be the reason someone smiles.